Hello everybody, this is Tim here again, here with another movie review, this time for Scream 7. Now just to jump into the Scream franchise, I decided to do a rewatch of all the films before I went and watched number 7. So just to jump into the films, I will say the original is the best easily, and I really don't think you even really needed more Scream after that original film. But in terms of what we got, I think the first one is amazing. Number 2, I used to not really like, but watching it now, I actually do like it now. I think it's a really good sequel. It's probably the second best Scream film. After that, Scream 3, I think it's just all right. I think it's easily the weakest. I used to enjoy it more just for the silliness of it. Actually, more than Scream 2. Watching it now, it's worse. But it's not bad. Scream 4, I actually do like. I think it's a really good sequel. It's not on the level, I don't think it's as strong as like Scream 2, but I do think it's a really good sequel. And that's kind of a divisive one in the fandom. Scream 5 I thought was solid. Scream 6 I actually thought was pretty good. I actually really enjoyed Scream 6. I thought it was really fun. And then we get to Scream 7. So, just to jump, just before I review this and talk about this, I have no bias for like any side of the conflict with the thing with Melissa Barrera or Jenna Ortega or whatever, like leaving the franchise. I do think it was probably time to pass the torch on to like a different set of characters other than like Sydney and the basic group, to just to give the franchise more of a fresh feel and with some new stories. I never, I didn't, I thought Melissa Barrera was like okay in Scream 5. I actually thought she was a lot better in Scream 6. I like Jenna Ortega more than her in Scream 5, but in Scream 6, I actually really enjoyed Melissa Barrera. I thought she did a great job. Her character was more interesting in that and had more to chew on in terms of acting. Um, and I was disappointed when I heard that she wasn't coming back. And I'm not even going to get into the whole thing about why she isn't coming back and all that. You can look it up if you don't know. But they decided to go with Neve Campbell for number 7, and I like Neve Campbell. She does a great job as Sydney, who's pretty much the best final girl in history, really, because she just keeps kicking ass. And I will say, Neve Campbell, best performance in the movie, great job. And I like the dynamic of Sydney, like having a family now, and her dynamic with like protecting her daughter and everything, her oldest daughter, and her oldest daughter wanting to like know more about her life and everything, and Sydney like having like PTSD and all that, which of course she would after everything she's been through. But hmm, it's really interesting to see like the family dynamic between her and her daughter. So it does give the character something new. I will say Gail is not really in this movie much. Courtney Cox does do a great job as Gail. She can pretty much sleepwalk with this character, but they really don't do anything interesting with Gail here. She is here and she does good, but honestly, she doesn't get a lot to do. But it is fun when she shows up. Um, and Chad and Mindy also were back in this from Scream 5 and 6. We're like working with Gail and helping her do reporter stuff and everything, which it's cool to see them back. And the actors do a fun job and they're entertaining to watch. They're fun to watch. But once again, those are another two that you really didn't need. Like you could have just took them completely out of the movie. But I don't hate the fact that they're here. Um, and yes, we get Matthew Lillard back as Stu through the entire film. He is the one returning character from all the other cast members that they bring back in this who gets the most to do. Like, he's pretty much throughout the majority of the film in little brief snippets where he just keeps calling Sydney on the phone and just fucking with her and everything. At the end, you get like cameos by David Arquette and like the dude who played her Sydney's brother in Scream 3 and everything. Um, and even like Laurie Metcalf, who was in Scream 2, you get a cameo from her. Like, they show up at the end in cameos and like AI projected cameos just to torment Sydney. And they could have just like honestly just been completely removed from the movie. Like, they don't add anything really. Like, they do nothing. Like, their cameos are just pointless. I thought they would be like more to them being here. I thought the killer would like call her on the phone and and like kind of pester her with like the voice of Roman, her brother's character, or the brother character from Scream 3, and like David Arquette, like maybe call Gail and mess with her, with him being dead, Dewey's character. But they really don't do nothing with that. I thought that was a missed opportunity. Um, to the point where they probably could just left all those actors out and just completely focused the AI thing or whatever just on Stu, which they really do. It's Stu pretty much the entire film, and then you get some Ghostface killings. McKenna Grace probably has the opening of this film is actually like in Stu's house, which is kind of like turned into like a resort now for like people to go to, like a horror place. There's got all the different like scream bodies and everything, and the movie tries to specifically put in your face that Stu's the killer, Stu's the killer, Stu's the killer. It puts it in there like so much that to the point where you're like, well, it's probably not Stu because they're forcing it so much, and then by the end, it's not. Um, And the opening kill, I will say, was kind of fun with like the motion activated like Ghostface they had in like the Mocker house and everything, and then the place gets burned down by the new Ghostface killer. I will say though that the opening really has nothing to do with the film. It's just kind of there. It really could have just been totally removed from the movie. It's almost like it was just put in there just to make you think that Stu was the killer because it's the burning down of the Mocker house, but really it could have just been completely removed. It doesn't really add anything. Um, Matthew Lillard as Stu, I do think does a great job on his return. He is fun to watch in his zany antics when he's on the calls or whatever with Nev Campbell, and that's their way of giving fans what they want of like having Stu back, but also not trying to be too far fetched of having Stu return from the dead or something. But really, you could have easily have just wrote a plot that would make sense in a meta way of having Stu return and just have like the meta commentary be about the fact that Stu returned. Um, to be like a final boss for an ending movie for Sydney or something. Like you could have made that work in a way to where it would have been believable, and at least in the context of a Scream movie, you could have made it work. The movie that we get here tries to reinforce the idea that it's the concept of Stu returning would be silly, that it wouldn't really make sense, but when you actually think about it, they could have just wrote it to where he could have just come back in the flesh. They could have came up with a way. There's a simple way to make it work. The dude could have just been in a coma after the TV fell on his head. His rich parents could have paid to have it covered up. You could have done that. But even I'm not against going like the AI route with the Stu character to have him come back that way. I'm not against that. But if you are going to go that direction, if you are going to tease the audience over and over with the possibility that Stu is back, only to have the movie end with, well, no, it's not Stu, then you really need a cool motivation and really enjoyable actors to actually be the killers to make up for that. In terms of to make up for the fact that it's not Stu, who is like the fan favorite Ghostface. You really need something to make up for that, to make that work, to make it feel earned, to make up for the fact that it isn't Stu. And what we get is the worst Ghostface killers in terms of identity and reveal in the entire franchise, easily. Um, it's worse than Scream 3 in terms of motivation and identity. It's like the one killer was just like a mental patient dude who they just like sicked on Sydney. There's 3 killers. That was one. He gets ran over by Gale. The other killer is the dude. Sorry, allergies. The other killer is the dude played by Ethan Embry who like works at the mental hospital or whatever. And then the last killer is Sydney's neighbor, who is this blonde chick who I believe is in the Pitch Perfect movies. The acting is fine from the actors who play the roles, but there's nothing about them that stand out in terms of characters. And the dude, Ethan Embry's character, is only in like one scene before the end of the movie when he's revealed as the killer. And we don't even like get a motivation for him. It's just like you get the idea that maybe he's like going out or in a relationship with the crazy neighbor blonde chick. That's it. That is it. And then the blonde chick, her motivation is like so half-assed. It's basically that she's an obsessed Sydney fangirl. I'm sorry about the coughing again, allergies. But yeah, she's an obsessed Sydney fangirl who's pretty much just like mad that Sydney's like not writing more books and shit because it helped her deal with like her abusive relationship with her abusive husband that she actually killed, and and so she's upset about that. It doesn't really make sense. It's not delved deep enough into. Once again, I'm sorry about that coughing. Please don't hate me. It's allergies. Yeah, it's not really delved into, and that's why it doesn't really work at all. It feels just like completely slapdash and thrown in there, almost like they wanted Stu to be the killer at the end, but then something happened and they couldn't get Matthew Lillard for the end of the movie, and so they're like, fuck, we gotta come up with something slapdash, and this is what the best they could do. It's awful. It's terrible motivation, especially for the way the movie presents it, because the whole movie's like, well, this is personal. I'm not hiding anymore. I'm the killer. Which is a complete misdirect, of course, because they're trying to make you think it's Stu, because, of course, if it's personal, it has to be somebody from the past. It's got to be Stu, obviously. That would make more sense. That would make more sense than what we got. And so we get to the end of the movie, and we get this, and you're like, oh, curveball. Well, that doesn't make any sense with anything else that was said in the movie. Unless you can go with the idea, of course, that the killers just were bullshitting and said all that just specifically to make, Sydney think it was Stu who had returned from the dead, only for it to be revealed that it isn't. But once again, if you're going to go that direction, you really need some charismatic actors and something really interesting in terms of the motivation here. I probably could have went with the Stu AI thing more, which I'm not saying that I'm fine. If you want to bring Stu back, fine. If you don't, fine. Just make it work in terms of a plot. It would have made more sense with the AI thing if the killer at the end was Stu's sister, who was mentioned before. It would have made way more sense if that was the case, because that would have made sense why she would have used like the image of Stu and everything and her brother to like try to complete what he started. That would have been more logical and more understandable. What we get at the end, no, this does not work. Not work at all. But yeah, the girl who plays Sydney's daughter in this, the older daughter, who's like kind of like the second main character of the film, she's good. She's fine. Overall, it was decent. I'd give this a 2.5 out of a possible 5 stars. This was a decent film. I liked it overall, but it's the second weakest and worst Scream movie after Scream 3. It is. But it's not bad. It's not a terrible film. It's just underwhelming and disappointing after how good like Scream 6 was. But yeah. Would I want a Scream 8? Sure. I do think it would be funny if once again, I know I'll keep apologizing for this, but allergies. Please bear with me. I'm almost done here with this review. But yeah, it would be funny if in like Scream 8 the killer was Stu. Like the big joke is that this movie enforced, that Stu is dead. He can't be alive. It wouldn't make any sense. And then in Scream 8, it actually turns out it is Stu as the killer in that one. That would actually work as a surprise because this film tries to make it clear that he is dead. Only if he popped up in Scream 8, you'd be like, well, fuck, that would actually work as a twist. But yeah, overall, it was decent. I liked it. Didn't love it. Would I buy it? I'm sure if it was cheap. It's not on the level of Scream 6. It's not as good as Scream 5 either. It's the second weakest after Scream 3, easily. And the big part of that is the motivation at the end and the identity of the killers. Like, it just makes it weird and worse because of the final reveal, because the movie tries to make it clear, like, oh, if Stu was alive, Sydney, that would just be silly. Like, that's literally like what one of the killers actually says, the Ethan Embry character. That would just be silly. It can't be Stu. But then when you see the actual motivation of why these people are doing this, or at least why the chick is doing it, you're like, well, that's way sillier. That's even dumber. Like having Stu just like be alive after waking up in a coma or some shit or something, like where his parents, just like paid to have him kept up in some facility somewhere because he's in a coma or something. That would have been more believable than what we got. And that's just what kind of makes this like identity reveal at the end funny. Like having Stu actually be the killer would have been more believable than what we got. But yeah, overall it was decent. I liked it. I don't regret seeing it in theaters. It was a fun time in theaters. So thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you again.